Before we start up, check out the Dork Album Volume 1. You can pre-order it now right off of Indiegogo. Support the channel. Let's do the thing. Learn a little something. Take a lesson. Learn it all.
So looking at Alliance War and the way that's set up, I had a question about synergies and what the logic is behind not having synergies, because at some point there was and then there wasn't for Alliance War. So what's the idea why it's not there, and will it actually make a return at any point? Is that possible?
I think that's something we're always evaluating. I think the challenge is right now as John grabs his bear.
There.
John's trying to leave. You can grab your
Go ahead.
You've already come in frame, John. All right, John's gonna wait. We still got plenty of questions to go through.
Camera's right there.
I didn't know you were doing camera.
Alliance War Synergies. Yeah, that's definitely something that we've been always thinking about reactivating. I think one of the big complexities with turning that stuff back on, I think especially for Alliance Wars, that we've been trying to think through and figure out how we eloquently do is so especially with champion complexity over the past few years, Synergies has been an area of the game where synergies can drastically change what some champions can do or drastically increase their power. And so when it comes to that, right, is if we're gonna turn synergies back on in Alliance Wars, is how do we display that information to players, right? Because some of it's right now in Alliance Wars, we've turned off most of the information. But how do we present to you that, hey, as an example, maybe Hulk, for example, hey, he's got synergies active, but then it's also, okay, well, which synergies? Because then that might change. And Hulk's maybe not the most complex, is not a complex example of it, but small things where, he gets the stun bonus with having Black Widow on your team, right?
Or anyone with Heimdall.
Yeah. There's other champions where, what's another good example? I think it's Symbiote Supreme with some other symbiote characters has a power 1 star. Okay, you probably want to know that going into that fight. And so for us, it's also looking at it, if we just turn it back on, is how do we make sure that we can properly communicate that type of information to players so that they can know what they're getting into? Because that might influence the roster you bring in and stuff like that, but then also, that would also drastically probably bump up challenge within that mode, right? And already for some alliances, I think at top tiers, players are for the most part pretty used to AEW, but adding in synergies would be a drastic jump in terms of challenge and complexity potentially. The other stuff that we're also kind of thinking through too, right? Is it just the synergies within your team that you bring in? Is it the synergies within anybody that anyone brings in? Because we also have diversity, right? So there's small stuff like that where it's okay, well, if I can't bring in my Black Widow because Dave, you brought in yours, so only you get the synergy benefit, but Black Widow's still on the map for us. So there's stuff like that we still have to think through. It's a lot of design challenges, edge cases of us figuring out if we're going to do it, what's the right way to turn that stuff back on so that players have the information they need to decide what routes they bring in, as well as gut checking. Okay, if we turn synergies back on today, what's that jump in challenge like? Because we haven't had it on for years. So yeah, that's kind of what we're thinking right now.
Okay.
No timeline on it, but it's been something we've had a lot of talks about of figuring out if and when and how.
Got it.
Learn a little something. Take a lesson. Learn it all.